Welcome back to this episode of the Mayoral Podcast. I am your host, Matt Mayer. Before I get into today's content, please make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and share with friends and family if you like the content you see here today. First topic I'm going to get into is COVID. I can't believe that after 3.5 years we're still talking about this, but the powers that be will not seem to let this go. And if you don't believe me, one of the biggest indicators to me is that they're already putting a mask on Joe Biden. It's almost like monkey see, monkey do is what they're trying to prepare us for. Well, if Joe Biden's going to be wearing a mask because he was in close contact with somebody who had COVID-19, we should all be wearing masks. So it's the conditioning is already starting. They're going to, at least at bare minimum, come back with mask mandates, and I can't believe that they're still trying to pull this. I went over in one of my previous episodes how ineffective masks actually are. The math behind stopping a particle of coronavirus with a cloth mask, yet they're still going to push these things. Do not comply. Don't fall for it. And just stay strong. There's people out there like me and like you, most likely the people that are watching this video right now. They are going to not put up with this, and the more people that don't put up with it, the less power they have. So stay strong. Don't listen to your friends or family who try to convince you that masking actually does something when it absolutely does not. The science before COVID-19 was it doesn't stop respiratory illnesses. Only during COVID-19 were we actually told by experts that masking does something to stop viruses. The data since has come out showing that masking does nothing. I'm going to go over a clip with Dr. Fauci getting called out by CNN about masking, and I'll break down that clip after you see what he has to say. It is shocking, but it isn't shocking. This guy has been lying for years to the American public, and when presented with the data right in front of his face, he tries his best cream Jean-Pierre, trying to spin it into gold, but I can't believe that anyone would actually listen to this guy still, but yet there are still people out there. So first topic, again, is going to be COVID. I'm going to go over this, just showing the inefficacy of the COVID-19 vaccine. This is from the UK's Office for National Statistics, and it's all-cause deaths by vaccination status for a specific population. And this is going back all the way from the beginning of 2021 through the middle of 2023. And you can see in this graph, this is one dose here that I'm showing. I'm going to see if I could zoom in a little bit. There we go. We'll zoom in. Okay, so for one dose, you can see here the percentage of deaths of 18 plus that are unvaccinated are 3.3%. Again, not my data. This is the UK's data. And the percentage of 18 plus that are unvaccinated are 18.5%, which says that roughly 20% of the population is accounting for less than 4%. There's a couple reasons for that. I'm just going off of what I heard Dr. Robert Malone say. He says when you get these vaccines, typically it's supposed to last for the RNA is supposed to last for somewhere between 1 and 2, maybe 3 hours. And that's how it was sold to physicians, is that is the half-life of the vaccine. It's going to last for that long. Your body generates an immune response. The T cells attack the infected cells, and that's how you get the immunity from the vaccine. It's typically kind of how they always work. However, this has been now shown, according to a study that recently came out that I heard Robert Malone talk about. This has been recently shown that it could last up to 60 days in the body, which my understanding is would be fine if the vaccine stayed put. It does not stay put. It's supposed to drain into the lymph nodes of your deltoid. That's where everyone's getting the shot, right in their arm. That's where the T cells should respond to, and essentially anything that's infected in that area, any of the cells, that's the cells that they attack. Ultimately, if you lose some cells in your shoulder, it's not a big deal. That's why that is the injection site for this vaccine. However, the COVID vaccine, the mRNA Pfizer and Moderna vaccine, does not stay put. It actually travels throughout the body. So that's why you're seeing a lot of autoimmune diseases that are causing these that's making this all-cause mortality for the people with the vaccine seemingly to go up. That's my assumption as to what's happening here. Just going off of what Dr. Malone said, the increase in autoimmune diseases since the rollout of the vaccine, and these numbers here, these statistics that you're seeing directly from the UK. So you see here that 81.5% of the population has at least one dose, and they count for almost 97% of all the deaths, and it gets worse as we go on. You look at the people with 2 doses. That's only 78.7. So that goes from, what was it, 81.5 roughly, 81.5 to 78.7. But the deaths only come down to 96 instead of 96.7. So again, you're losing a few percentage points in the people that got both doses, but the amount of deaths are staying very high. Again, these numbers, the orange line and the green line, those numbers are not going to change because it's still going to be the unvaccinated, it's still going to be the same percentage of the population, and their deaths is still going to account for the same. Then you go down here, the third dose. Now this is where you see staggering numbers. You see 65% of the population in the UK that's 18 plus have 3 or more doses of the vaccine, but that's accounting for 91.5% of all mortalities in basically all of 2023. I mean, you see that number has gone up above 90% and has been since roughly, what do you want to call that, August of 2022. So since then, it's been counting for 90+% of the deaths, total deaths, and the amount of the population is staying close to 65%. That's a staggering number. The way these vaccines were supposed to work and the way that they are working, to me, is exactly why you're seeing the difference in the all-cause mortality rate. Because if it was just an innocuous vaccine that didn't do anything more than provide you with the protection or with some level of protection from COVID-19, that would be fine. But the RNA stays around for longer than it's supposed to. It's only supposed to be there for a few hours. Again, according to Dr. Robert Malone, who is one of the inventors of the mRNA vaccine technology, and it's staying around for upwards of 60 days. Now, that might be okay if the vaccine stayed put where it was supposed to, which is in the shoulder and in the lymph nodes of the shoulder. However, it's traveling around the body, and there's no telling exactly where it's going to go, which is why you are seeing a lot of different autoimmune diseases pop up, because it's infecting other cells. The T cells in your body are responding, which is what they're supposed to do, and that's essentially what an autoimmune disease does. It attacks the cells of your body. It just depends on where, what particular part of the body that the T cells react to, and that's why you're seeing something like myocarditis and pericarditis pop up, because it's in some cases going to the heart and causing damage. Our own T cells are causing damage. It's not the vaccine itself. It's where the vaccine is and how the body's responding to it. Now, back to what I was originally talking about with Dr. Fauci. Again, it's COVID time, so Dr. Fauci is going to come out of the woodworks. This clip is from CNN, and I think the anchor does a really good job of pressing Dr. Fauci on masks. And his response to me is absolutely insane and in the face of all science. But I'll play his reaction and then I'll respond to what he said. So here's what Fauci had to say about bringing masks back.
Hope that if in fact we get to the point where the volume of cases is such and organizations like the CDC recommend, CDC doesn't mandate anything, recommends that people wear masks, I would hope that they abide by the recommendation and take into account the risk to themselves and to their families. And again, we're not talking about forcing anybody to do anything.
Totally understood. There is a perception out there by many, how many I don't know, that they don't work and that the data concludes that they didn't work in the first go-round. Respond to that on masks.
Yeah, well, that's not so. When you're talking about at the population level, that the data are less strong than knowing that if you look on a situation as an individual protecting themselves or protecting them from spreading it, there's no doubt that masks work.
So I'll continue on with the clip, but just want to comment on that right there. He says that on a broad level, because he knows what's coming, and the anchor brings it up in this next part of the clip. He knows what's coming. The masks are not working. He's trying to make the case that on an individual level, you can make the case that it works. However, the CDC is trying to make a recommendation for people broadly across the entire United States. There's 335 million people that live in the United States, and the recommendation, a lot of these mandates are going off of their recommendation. And he already is prefacing what is about to come by saying that, on an individual basis, there might be some extra protection that somebody can get, or it might make sense for certain people, but that's not what they've recommended in the past. They've recommended mass masking of people all over the country, schools, on public transportation, in grocery stores, in retail stores, all over the place, even outdoors to begin with. They were saying that masking was going to help. Now, this guy is going to bring up this study, and Fauci's still going to spin it. So here it goes. Here, I'm going to continue on with this clip now.
Studies give different percentages of advantage of wearing it, but there's no doubt that the weight of the studies, and there have been many studies, indicate the benefit of wearing masks.
I'm going to refer to one of them. You've heard about it before. I heard about it from a number of radio callers. Brett Stevens in the Times talked about Cochrane. Put that on the screen. The most rigorous and comprehensive analysis of scientific studies conducted on the efficacy of masks for reducing the spread of respiratory illness, including COVID-19, was published last month. Its conclusions, said Tom Jefferson, the Oxford epidemiologist who is the lead author, were unambiguous. There is just no evidence that masks, make any difference. He told the journalist Mayan Damasi, full stop. But wait, hold on. What about the N95 masks as opposed to the lower quality surgical or cloth masks? Makes no difference. None of it, he said. Well, what about the studies that initially persuaded policymakers to impose mask mandates? They were convinced by non-randomized studies, flawed observational studies. How do we get beyond that finding of that particular review?
Yeah, but there are other studies, Michael, that show at an individual level for individual. When you're talking about the effect on the epidemic or the pandemic as a whole, the data are less strong. But when you talk about as an individual basis of someone protecting themselves or protecting themselves from spreading it to others, there's no doubt that there are many studies that show that there is an advantage. When you took at the broad population level, like the Cochrane study, the data are less firm with regard to the effect on the overall pandemic. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about an individual's effect on their own safety. That's a bit different than the broad population level.
So again, he's going with he's doubling down on crazy. And at this point, it's probably tripling, quadrupling down on crazy. And he's just not stopping with the masks and saying that they work. So most people have seen it. There's a clip from Fauci going on, I don't know what national news network it was, might have been ABC, NBC, whatever, in March of 2020, saying that masks are not effective with stopping respiratory illnesses. So there was no reason for people to be wearing masks then. Then, shortly after, he reversed course and said masks do work. When pressed about it later, he said that initially he said that masks didn't work because he didn't want to have a mass influx of people trying to obtain the masks, and we needed to have them for healthcare workers, etc., first responders, things of that nature. He definitely lied about masks in the past. And if you believe that the pandemic was as deadly as some people make it seem, that it was the worst thing since the Black Plague, if you believe that, and he was willing to lie about how well masks work to protect people from getting this horrendous disease that by that logic would have caused tens of thousands, 100,000, maybe millions of deaths by not telling people to wear masks immediately. If he was willing to lie then, why wouldn't he be lying? Why wouldn't it be possible for him to be lying now? So he's lying one way or the other. He admitted that he lied. We know that he lied at least once. Even if you believe now he's telling the truth, he's capable. My point is he's capable of lying about it. Now, it doesn't matter if people believe he's lying now or he's lying then. He's capable. My point is, again, that he's capable of making the lie. So You can choose to believe that now he's being righteous, he's telling the truth in the face of evidence like this. Or you can believe what I believe, which is he was telling the truth in the beginning, and then somebody above him told him, hey, we need to put masks on people. And then he reversed course and said that masks are going to save hundreds of thousands of lives, millions of lives. If that was the case, then he cost hundreds of thousands or millions of lives, at bare minimum, by not being consistent with his message. So again, if he's willing to do that, why wouldn't he be willing to lie now? It's not just our officials. It's officials all over the world that are lying, have been lying, and continue to lie about COVID-19, the vaccines, the masking, the lockdowns. They're covering themselves from admitting that they were wrong. Now, New Zealand was one of the worst countries when it came to lockdowns. It helped them in doing the lockdowns by being an island country, so that you didn't have to protect your borders against any bordering country and really just have to reduce the amount or eliminate the incoming flights from people from other countries. So New Zealand locked down, and they locked down extremely hard. Now, the current prime minister is gaslighting the population and lying to people by saying that there's no compulsory vaccine mandate or anything like that from the government, which is an absolute lie. So I'm going to play this guy recently talking about how the government didn't force people to get vaccinated. And then I'm going to play a clip from a couple of years ago talking about how New Zealand was going to handle the pandemic by forcing people to get the vaccine in order to continue working. So here's this clown talking about how the government didn't do any of that. It's all in our imagination.
In terms of the vaccine mandates, I acknowledge that it was a challenging time for people, but they ultimately made their own choices. There was no compulsory vaccination. People made their own choices.
Is any of that going to be included in the inquiry that's going on at the moment around COVID? Is it going to look at any of those issues?
The Royal Commission can look at whatever it wants in regard to the COVID response.
So that was a very quick clip of him just saying, hey, we did not force people to get the COVID vaccine, or we didn't compel them to get the COVID vaccine, which they absolutely did. So here's the clip of them doing the exact opposite of what he said they just did.
Thousands of workers in New Zealand who have a close contact with customers now need to get fully vaccinated against COVID-19 or risk losing their jobs. A vaccine mandate is being expanded to around 40% of all workers. That's up from 15%. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says she does not believe the new rules are an overreach of government power.
The government has already mandated vaccination across workforces in important sectors where workers are likely to come into contact with COVID-19, including the border, health settings, and, of course, education. With the new traffic light system, businesses that we previously treated as high risk, like hospitality, hairdressers and gyms, can operate at all levels if they ask customers for a vaccine certificate. And so it follows that if customers must be vaccinated, then so too must the workers.
The announcement comes just a few days after the government set a 90% double-dose vaccination target for its eligible population. As part of its plan to end lockdowns, New Zealand will also require people visiting high-traffic businesses to show vaccine passports. Close to 80 infections have been detected in the past 24 hours. The epicenter, Auckland, continues to account for most of the cases.
So the current prime minister is saying that people were not compelled to get the vaccine. Is, as somebody who ended up choosing not to get the vaccine and costing me a six-figure job in doing so, and set myself and my family back financially almost 2 years ago now, I find it unbelievably frustrating to see these people lie to your face and say that they did not force anyone to get a vaccine. No, they just were going to take away your livelihood. 40%, you saw in that clip, 40% of New Zealand's workforce were going to have to be vaccinated, fully vaccinated, in order to continue working. You're going to tell me that you're going to force 40% of your workforce to get a vaccine, otherwise they cannot work, and that's not any type of government coercion to get this vaccine taken by all their citizens? And saying in that clip too, they talked about 90%. They wanted 90% of their eligible population to be double vaccinated in order to end lockdowns, to give people their freedoms back that the government just took away for a virus that was, in most cases, was pretty mild for people that were under the age of 65. The overwhelming population had very mild symptoms. The overwhelming population under the age of 65, and really once you get under the age of 50, didn't have very severe symptoms when it came to having COVID-19, especially as we got past the initial strain, as we moved from the Alpha variant to the Delta variant, and then definitely onto Omicron. It was extremely mild symptoms, and they were forcing their people to get it. Otherwise, they were taking away their ability to live their lives. They were taking away their ability to provide for themselves and their family by saying 40%. Don't give me that bullshit that they did not compel anyone to. Everyone had their own choice. No, most people can't make that choice. And like I said, that for myself and for a lot of other people that made that decision, it's an absolute insult to It's an insult to the people that had to take it anyway. I knew a lot of people that did not want to take it, that had to, that weren't in the position that I was in to be able to say, you know what? I'm going to stand here and I'm not going to take the vaccine. And I'm going to set myself back financially. A lot of people did that. But there was even more people that didn't want to take it, that couldn't make that decision. And for you to sit there and say, we did not force people to get it, that's an absolute crock of shit, saying that you did not force people to take it. You absolutely forced people to take it. You were going to alienate 40% of your workforce at minimum, and then you wanted 90% of your people to be vaccinated in order to open the country back up, and then made these people pariahs if they didn't get it? Don't give me that shit. This is why you can't. Nobody can trust these people. Who would actually believe that person? And this guy he's the PM now. He wasn't the PM at the time, but he was in their government. There's a clip of Jacinda Ardern talking, and this clown sitting behind her when she was announcing a lot of these lockdowns and mandates and all this bullshit that they tried in not only New Zealand, but across the world, but specifically for this guy. He was sitting there in the background. So don't give me that shit. I can't believe that people put these people in power. Anyone who lies about that needs to be gone. Primary them out. If you're a liberal, go ahead. Go vote for a liberal again, but primary this person out. It's unbelievable that these people, they try to get away with this shit. And people are falling for it. Don't fall for it. Don't be naive. Don't be stupid. Remember what happened. Don't listen to this guy saying that there was no compulsory vaccine in New Zealand. That's an absolute crock of shit. Absolute horseshit. And maybe the worst part about this is the censorship regime from big tech. Places like YouTube that shot down and totally censored, took down the content of people creating, saying that this vaccine is not what it's supposed to be, masks don't work. And they're going to be up to it again. There's articles out there saying that YouTube is going to be at it again. They did it last time, and they're potentially going to do it again. They censored and took down content that contradicted what the WHO recommended and the information that they were putting out. And somehow these people have not learned. They have learned. They learned that they could get away with it. That's what they've learned. So just to use a couple of examples of what this organization, the WHO, put out there that was censored by YouTube, which YouTube and Google are the same thing. Masks work. They would not allow any information out there that masks were ineffective. I just played the clip. The most comprehensive study saying that masks were ineffective, including the N95. The mortality rate initially came out from the WHO. That was 3.4%. I played a clip in one of my previous videos of Trump getting lambasted on national television because he said, from who he was talking to, they believed that number was significantly lower because cases were significantly underreported. And that number ended up being much lower than the 3.4% that they initially put out there. And the final number was under 1%, and they still believe that the cases were grossly undercounted. And we all know that they grossly overcounted the deaths. It's still on their website, the CDC. It says, it doesn't say deaths of COVID. It says deaths involving COVID, which means you died and you had COVID. That doesn't mean it was the underlying cause or a contributing factor. It just means you had it when you died. So deaths overcounted, cases undercounted. So the numerator's higher than it should be. The denominator's lower than it should be. And it's still under 1%. And they censored anyone that would say things like 3.4 is not the actual mortality rate. It's much lower. Censored. They censored the lab leak theory. It was a natural occurring virus. You couldn't say anything else. Forget the fact that there was a big sign that said coronavirus lab right where it originated. Forget about that. Absolutely shut down. You couldn't talk about it. So this, among other things, are just examples of what the WHO had shut down. And YouTube is considering doing it again. And these censorship campaigns from big tech have real world and political consequences. I'm going to play a clip here from 2019. And it's talking about the influence that Google had in the 2016 election just with its search results. And Google, again, same thing as YouTube, is looking to do it again. Censor any information that it doesn't like. It's not disinformation or misinformation. It's just information that Google doesn't like. It doesn't matter if it's either or neither. It could be none of the above. But if Google doesn't like it, they will censor it. And here's a clip from Dr. Robert Epstein talking about the influence that Google had on the 2016 election and how they continue to have influences not only on elections but on people's perception of reality.
2020, you can bet that all of these companies are going to go all out, and the methods that they're using are invisible, they're subliminal, they're more powerful than most any effects I've ever seen in the behavioral sciences, and I've been in the behavioral sciences for almost 40 years. I am indeed Dr. Robert Epstein. The most important thing for you to know about me is that I'm the father of 5 wonderful children. As it happens, I'm also a research psychologist at the American Institute for Behavioral Research and Technology. I have been center-left my whole adult life, but I value my country and democracy more than I value any party or candidate. That is why I'm speaking out today. I'm here to explain why Google poses a serious threat to democracy, how monitoring systems can protect us from companies like Google, and how Congress can immediately end Google's worldwide monopoly on search. My plan for ending that monopoly was published just yesterday in Business Week. I've been a research psychologist for nearly 40 years. My PhD is from Harvard, and since 1981, I've published extensively on AI and other topics. Some of my research has focused on Google, on the company's massive surveillance operations, censorship capabilities, and unprecedented ability to manipulate the thinking of 2.5 billion people, soon to be 4+ billion. I've written articles about Google for Time Magazine, USA Today, that kind of thing, but also for the Daily Caller and even Russia's Sputnik News. I reach out to diverse audiences because I believe the threats posed by Google, and to a lesser extent Facebook, are so serious that everyone needs to know about them. Here are just 3 disturbing findings from my research which adheres to the very highest standards of scientific integrity. Number 1, in 2016, Google's search algorithm likely impacted undecided voters in a way that shifted at least 2.6 million votes to Hillary Clinton, whom I supported.
2.6 million votes to Hillary Clinton. Now, I'm sure he's got more in terms of what led him to that conclusion. Guy seems like an extremely smart person, and he's been posting things for years now about the censorship and the manipulation by big tech companies. He's worth a follow on Twitter. You'll find a lot more information. But just from this clip alone, he's saying that as much as they cried Russia, 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 which ultimately the Mueller investigation and other investigations concluded that it shifted in the 30, 40,000 range of votes that wouldn't have been enough to overturn the outcome of the election, that there were bots out there, but it was such small accounts that really had no effect. But nobody cares about what Google did, and that's 2.6 million votes is what this guy's saying, shifted towards Hillary Clinton. It's unbelievable that they don't care about this, but they care about Russia. Now, they should care about Russia and other foreign countries interfering with our elections. No doubt about it. But this is a bigger threat than Russia.
I know this because I preserved more than 13,000 election-related searches prior to Election Day, and Google's search results were significantly biased in favor of Secretary Clinton. I know the number of votes that shifted because I've conducted dozens of controlled experiments that measure how opinions shift when search results are biased. I call this shift SEAM, the search engine manipulation effect, which I first published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2015. Biased search results can easily produce shifts in the opinions and voting preferences of undecided voters by up to 80% in some demographic groups because people blindly trust high-ranking search results over lower ones. SEAM is an especially dangerous form of influence because it is, in effect, subliminal. It also leaves no paper trail for authorities to trace. It's an example of a short-lived or, quote, ephemeral experience. That's a phrase you'll find in internal emails that have leaked recently from Google. I'm now studying 7 such manipulations like SEAM, and unlike billboards or those Russian-placed ads, these manipulations are invisible and non-competitive. They're controlled entirely by big tech companies, and there is no way to counteract them.
So I'm not going to play the whole clip. That clip goes on for another 9 minutes or so, and he just gets into talking about the effects that places like Google have on the election. So he's saying that in 2016, in this clip, and this is again in 2019 prior to the 2020 election, the effect that Google had on getting 2.6 million votes for Hillary Clinton. She still ended up losing to Donald Trump. But that is an unbelievable amount of votes. If they did that in 2016, we all know the censorship that was out in the open in 2020. How many votes did they affect in 2020 for Joe Biden away from Donald Trump or even a third-party candidate? Speaking of interference in elections, what's happening right now to Donald Trump with all the indictments is clearly going to impact the 2024 election. He seems to be running away with the Republican nomination. Every time he gets indicted, his numbers actually become more durable. So he's up over 50% in the national polls. In a lot of the key swing states, he's got such a vice grip on those particular states that it seems implausible right now that he doesn't get the Republican nomination. Meanwhile, he's getting indicted left and right, and it doesn't seem to have an end to it. Now, this is certainly going to play, like I said, it's certainly going to play into the 2024 election. And previously, Democrats had a huge problem with the DOJ getting involved in prosecuting political opponents. And they thought that Trump was going to start throwing all these people in jail. That never came to fruition. So don't forget what they did and don't fall for what they're doing now. Here's another clip of exactly what they said in 2020, what they were saying in 2020 versus what's happening in 2023, and how concerned about Trump they were in 2020 going after his political enemies, and how unconcerned they are in 2023 when he's getting indicted seemingly every week.
Now that he's got the right attorney general in position to do it, we now know they really have been trying to gin up criminal prosecutions and criminal investigations into the president's perceived enemies, politically motivated persecution, right? Courtesy of Bill Barr. I'll roll in the FBI on you. That's how banana republics work, right?
The home of the 45th president of the United States has been raided by the FBI.
Mr. Trump is using the Justice Department to go after his perceived enemies. I feel worried about the prospect of the Justice Department being used as a tool of this president or any in our little banana republic. Any capable prosecutor can get a grand jury to hand down an indictment of something as innocent as a ham sandwich.
Today, an indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump.
Breaking news on former President Trump. He's been indicted for the 4th time in 5 months.
Bill Barr, on the president's behalf, is weaponizing the Justice Department to go after the president's enemies. When you win an election, you don't seek to just prosecute the losing side.
The president using the Justice Department as a weapon to get what he wants.
Department of Justice is totally politicized.
Sicking the Department of Justice on political opponents, threatening to imprison his political rival, Banana Republic style.
Trying to exact revenge against all of his enemies, tin pot dictator in a banana republic.
Is acting more like a banana republic dictator.
He's using government resources to go after his political opponent.
Essentially, we are a banana republic, that we are seeking to have a bogus and criminal investigation into a political opponent.
And that's using the Department of Justice to also target Trump's political opponent for nefarious reasons. This is a massive abuse of power and a betrayal of our values.
The President of the United States is targeting a family member of a political opponent. This is the type of thing that happens in a banana republic.
And trying to take out a political rival in Joe Biden.
Criminally investigating an American political rival, someone the president is worried about losing to in the next election.
To investigate my principal opponent or a principal opponent in the upcoming election. Houston, we have a problem.
Don't you think that's something that should be investigated when the incumbent political party opens a counterintelligence investigation on the candidate of the opposing party?
We know Trump is itching to politicize the Justice Department, and the Attorney General has been super shady.
The president is weaponizing the Department of Justice to bring cases against his enemies. The Department of Justice is in an existential crisis.
Again, it's yet another example of the Justice Department basically losing all of its independence in this administration.
This is now about corrupting the next election. And for me, this was crossing the red line.
A president who is actively trying to potentially steal the upcoming election,
but to try to take out a political rival. The end goal being 2020.
Donald Trump and his attorney general are using the Justice Department. The only difference between this and a banana republic is that Trump does not eat fruit.
The 2020 election is really the last chance we have to stop our system from fully sliding into a corrupt banana republic.
Bill Barr has done everything that Donald Trump has wanted him to do.
Yeah.
We're living in a banana republic right now.
When you start using the Justice Department to go after your enemies, that's very, very dangerous.
Donald Trump is using the Department of Justice to go after his enemies in any way that he can.
Having the head of the chief federal law enforcement agency essentially working on his behalf to investigate a political rival.
To investigate the family of a political opponent. Basically, banana republic behavior.
We're no better than some, some banana republic.
And he's using the abuse of power and every element of the presidency to try to do something to smear me.
We just have to demonstrate that he will not take power. If he does run.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to see the justification of going after Trump versus Trump going after, in this case, they're referring to him investigating Hunter Biden. They couldn't care less about Donald Trump being indicted 4 times. Hillary Clinton should have been charged and was not charged for very similar circumstances. So clearly, weaponization of the Department of Justice, that was all speculation of weaponization, whereas now it's clearly weaponization of the Justice Department by the Biden administration. They keep talking about it. You see it in the clip that I just played. Seth Meyers, a late-night host, talking about how the 2020 election was maybe our last chance at preserving our democracy. And Rachel Maddow is probably one of the worst in the industry about hyperbolic speak and trying to talk things into existence that just aren't true. Here's a clip of her talking specifically about Trump and how if he wins in 2024, that he's never going to relinquish the power of the presidency, that he's just going to become king. So just another absolutely absurd assertion by one of the worst in the industry, Rachel Maddow. Here's her talking about it.
The election means one of two things, if this is the way he's going to approach it. Either he loses the election and he goes to prison, or he wins the election, he doesn't go to prison, and is that for life, that he gets to be president? Will we keep having more elections or no? If every election is a new opportunity for him to go to prison, do you think he allows us to have new elections? I mean, if those are the stakes, if winning the election is his plan to stay out of prison, what happens in that election if and when he does not win it? I mean, if Trump and his supporters see the stakes as losing and going to prison or winning and being president, and probably president for life, how should we expect that he and the Republican Party and Republican officials in swing states are going to handle the conduct of that election that Trump may very well lose?
And there she goes, already sowing doubt in the 2024 election. Both sides do this, to be honest with you, but there's going to be an out for them to say Trump stole the election. The Republicans in swing states set it up for him to steal the election, which is essentially what Donald Trump is claiming in all these other states, that Democrats in those states organized to steal the 2020 election for him. But when she does it, she's not an election denier. She's not a conspiracy theorist. The FBI is not going to kick down her door. But when you do it, we'll probably send the FBI after you, and I'll probably get the FBI after me after this video, or one of my many videos, because we're on the wrong side of the Department of Justice, the current Department of Justice. So it's really ridiculous. Again, this hypothetical, trying to talk these crazy scenarios in there. Her premise is that he wants to become president to not have to serve any prison time. However, he didn't announce until right after the 2022 midterms, and all the indictments came 6 months later. The theory is flawed right out the gate. If his plan for running for president was to avoid prison time before he was even indicted once, either he's Nostradamus or she's just making it up, which clearly she's just making it up. And then her second assertion is that when he becomes president, if he becomes president in 2024 and assumes office in January of 2025, that in 2029, January 20th, 2029, when he's set to leave office, he won't leave office and will be president for the rest of his life, essentially being a king until he ends up dying. I don't know what evidence for that she has, other than the fact that he lost in 2020, wanted to get the election results changed because he thought that there was nefarious acting happening in a lot of these swing states. That didn't happen. And guess what happened on January 20th of 2021? Trump left office. So he can't even run in 2028 if he were to win in 2024. He can't even run. So her evidence that he's going to stay in office forever if he's not elected president is that last time he wasn't elected president, he left office. It's unbelievable. And, her followers are going to eat it up. They're going to believe it. Like, yeah, Trump's not going to leave. No way. If he wins in 2024, like that's the end. He's king. It's unbelievable that these people say these things and there are people that actually believe them. So meanwhile, another tragedy hits, hurricane in Florida. Joe Biden manages to make it out to Florida, surprisingly, because that's not a very friendly state to Democrats anymore after the last few elections, especially after the 2022 midterms, where Republicans cleaned up. But he did make it out there, and Peter Doocy of Fox News asked Karine Jean-Pierre, and she's one of the worst probably ever at press secretary, and to be somewhat fair to her, it's not an easy job being the press secretary for any president, because all you're doing is trying to spin the crap that the administration puts out there into gold, and she's not very good at it. But here's Peter Doocy grilling her about him going and making time to go to certain places, but not other places. He's talking about East Palestine and how the president has still not gotten to East Palestine. So here's Kareem Jean-Pierre talking about why he hasn't made it to East Palestine.
Just one more. The president said over the long weekend that he hasn't had the occasion to go to East Palestine. I just haven't been able to break. The derailment was on February 3rd. President Biden has not had a break since February 3rd.
The president will go to East Palestine. He promised that he would, and he will. You saw him.
So he was not on a break when he was in Lake Tahoe?
I will say this again. The president is going to go to East Palestine, as he has said that he is committed to do. You saw him just this Saturday visit a rural area, right, that was devastated. Some parts were devastated by Hurricane Idalia, and he was there with the First Lady. They were able to hear directly from the American people, and he was able to talk about what is it that they need. What else do they need from the federal government? So the president is going to go to East Palestine. I don't have a time or date to announce at this time, but he will go.
So apparently Joe Biden had the foresight to make time to go to a hurricane that just happened, and somehow was able to predict the wildfires in Maui, and after 2 weeks finally make it out to the wildfire site in Maui. But he hasn't had time. He hasn't had a break since February 3rd to go to East Palestine. I was saying Palestine. It's so funny that he makes that claim, and Kareem Jean-Pierre has to spin it as something that makes sense. It makes absolutely no sense. He should have showed up at the train derailment. At this point, he may as well not show up. It's been so long that it would be an absolute slap in the face, I believe. If I were one of the residents there, I wouldn't want to see the president showing up after, February? We're talking 6+ months now. And this guy hasn't shown up, and then he's made it to other tragedy sites, but hasn't made it to East Palestine. Like, that would be a complete slap in the face. He's better off not even showing up. I'm sure he'll show up at one point, and hopefully he'll get booed. I know he'll probably get booed. I live in Ohio, not too far away from East Palestine. Luckily, me and my family weren't affected by that. I live closer to Lake Erie. That's where we get our water from. So luckily, we weren't affected by that, but there were people that were, and it's absolutely unbelievable that they're trying to spin this as he just hasn't had the time, or he's been able to make it to other places. How is that going to make the people there feel better? And it's an absolute blunder by Biden and his administration. He should have made it out there a lot sooner. And at this point, there's almost no point in him going out there. It's just going to be a slap in the face to those people. And last topic for today, just one more ridiculous statement by another elite trying to control the climate, which we really have no way to do. We have plenty of money to say that we're going to do so, but we have really no way to stop it other than stopping people from moving at all. And I don't think these elites with their private jets, multiple private jets, Bill Gates, are going to stop taking them. However, they're going to still try to make you allergic to meat. So here's a clip of one of the elites in New York talking about how we should make everyone allergic to meat, so therefore we don't have to have all this livestock all over the place, creating all this excess carbon and methane and greenhouse gas emissions, and we should just inject people with a vaccine of sorts that make them allergic to meat. So just another absurd assertion. They hate you. They hate everybody but themselves. And you're not worthy of the water you drink. You're not worthy of the air you breathe. And you're certainly not worthy of the meat that you eat. So here you go. Another ridiculous clip.
Climate change is one of the biggest problems that we face today. Millions could suffer hunger, diseases, coastal flooding as a result of climate change. We may be beyond the point of no return. Scientists believe that we have no choice but to consider geoengineering. This is large-scale manipulation of the Earth, such as spraying sulfate aerosols into the ozone layer in order to increase the reflectivity of the planet. But geoengineering is very, very risky. We have never attempted these technologies on such a large scale.
I had to stop it here. I have to chime in. This is too risky. Again, this injecting something into the atmosphere. And I'm not saying that it's not. I don't know anything about it. But what he says next is injecting people directly with something to make them have an adverse effect to eating meat is not risky. This is what these people think of you. They don't want to put anything in the atmosphere that could potentially harm the atmosphere, but injecting you directly with something that will make you not eat meat is something that they are all for. These people hate you. They absolutely hate you. Unbelievable.
So we could end up destroying the entire ozone layer. I want to consider a class of solutions that have never been considered before. Human engineering. It involves the biomedical modification of human beings. I'll give 4 examples. Here's one. 18% of greenhouse gas emissions come from livestock farming. So if we eat less meat, we could significantly reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Now, some people would be willing to eat less meat, but they lack the willpower. Human engineering could help. Just as some people are naturally intolerant to milk or crayfish, like myself, we could artificially induce mild intolerance to meat by stimulating our immune system against common bovine proteins. And in this way, we can create an aversion to eating eco-unfriendly food. And we can do this, for example, by having meat patches, kind of like nicotine patches. People can then wear these patches before they go out for dinner to curb their enthusiasm for eating meat.
They hate you. These people hate you. Absolutely hate you. Why on earth do they want to introduce more dietary restrictions by some type of patch or whatever, some type of injection? Again, there's no other reason except they absolutely hate everybody on the planet except themselves. That guy probably took a private jet there. I don't know who this guy, this Matthew Lau is. No idea who this guy is, but people are listening to him. People are listening to him. That's it for this episode of the Mayoral Podcast. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, share with friends and family if you like the content you've seen here today, and I will see you all in the next video.